Welcome everybody to the Cinema Condition with filmmaker and creator of the Nerdcore Podcast Network, Raul Alejandro Mendoza. And today we are here for another episode, another movie with another guest today. I hope everybody enjoyed last week's episode of Tigers Are Not Afraid with our wonderful guest, Mariana Rivera. And today we're going to be talking to none other than one of my favorite people to talk about movies with. One of the people who we ask if he even watches movies because he doesn't sound like he doesn't even like them. But you, you heard the laugh and you know him well because he has a couple of sound bites on the other podcast. That is none other than Ayden Byrnes. He's here to talk about Through a Glass Darkly from director Ingmar Bergman. How are we doing, Ayden?
Pretty good. Surviving in this quarantine time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure, dude.
Me on this one
yet. Yep. What's it called? At least you won't have cars going in the background, right?
I know, yeah. I've heard like one, I think, since we've started talking on Discord.
Yeah. Well, it's not picking up, so, you know.
Yeah, it's like barely out there.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on here with your audio. It's like coming in really hot and then it's coming down really low after, but yeah, what's it called? Ayden is a filmmaker and, you know, cinephile and stuff. But, you know, he's done a lot of cool stuff. He's a cinematographer. He does coloring. And, you know, maybe one day he'll finally let go of that damn script that he's been writing. He doesn't want to let it out yet.
I still haven't touched that much, but I think I'll eventually get back to
that. Yep. Oh, I hope so, bro. Because, you know, you're great behind the camera. I just want to see what you do. What's it called when you've written something. But yeah, Ayden's been on the podcast so many times. Ayden introduced me to this film when we did our first month on Ingmar Bergman, and then he came back for another month with us to do a horror month, and then came back for another month to do Tarkovsky month last December. And this month this time he's getting a crack at a new show. Ayden's been on so many shows. I want to say the main show he's been on the Impaired Files. He's been on the Mini Pod. He's been on everything. And Ayden is finally coming into like this show, which is honestly the show that is made for people like Ayden, because Ayden loves this movie so much, and I love this movie so much, and we're gonna have ourselves a really good conversation about this movie. But Ayden, what's it called? Why'd you pick this movie, man?
Just because we've done the Bergman month and Tarkovsky, but I think just this is one of my favorite classic movie of all time, especially within Bergman. But I think just my favorite classic. And there's so many great things about this, like the cinematography, the story, like the acting.
Yeah.
The sound design I was listening to a little bit more during this watch through. Even just that is fantastic. There's not a lot going on, but like the way that they handle the silence and then having sounds in the background for certain things is phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh man, we're gonna have a conversation about that, bro. Because there's like just those parts when they're in like in the boat, and you know you're just hearing like you know, just those stuff with the way the water hitting the boat. And it's just the sound design is incredible in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, today we're going to be doing 1961's Through a Glass Darkly, directed by Mr. Probably one of the most, in the opinion of a lot of people, man, in history in general, cinematic history, probably one of the most perfect filmmakers ever. You know, this man never put out something that wasn't made with every intent of his making, man. Like he did not put something out that wasn't good. I have never seen anything that Bergman has made that's not good.
Yeah, I would agree. There's certainly things that are, I guess, not what I would want to watch all the time, but you have to respect them even though it's not like something you rewatch. Like Autumn Sonata, I would say, is probably like my least favorite that I've seen of his, but I think it's still an incredible film. It's just like not my personal favorite, I guess. But I think everything he touches is amazing.
Yeah, it's gold, man. So Bergman is a big filmmaker. He would start his career in 1951 with Summer Interlude. You know, a lot of people really, talk about one of his next film as being really one of the big ones that put him out there was, Summer with Monica in 1953. But, you know, in phenomenal film. Yeah, and then
Harriet Anderson.
Oh, yeah. In 1957, though, he really does break out with The Seventh Seal. And he would go on to make other incredible films like Wild Strawberries, The Magician, The Virgin Spring, Through a Glass Darkly, Winter Light, The Silence, Persona. In 1966, Persona, man, he creates probably one of the most obscure, one of the most incredible surrealist films of all time. He would even do films such as like, Cries and Whispers, Scenes from a Marriage, The Serpent's Egg, Autumn Sonata, Fanny and Alexander. He does he's multiple time winner of the Best International Feature Oscar. He won it for this movie that we're talking about it today. He also won it for Fanny and Alexander. But this man, it's a career unlike no other. He was a theater director as well. He wrote a lot. He owned a whole freaking island that he used for his movies that was only for him. And it's wild, man. This man is one of the most incredible filmmakers of all time. One that influenced so many filmmakers coming after too. I remember seeing a letter that Kubrick wrote to Bergman, basically, professing his love for him, and like, I believe your movies are probably some of the most beautiful movies ever made. And Bergman's work really does speak for itself, but his work is really filled with so many different themes, and there's a lot of sexual desire in a lot of his films, a lot of existential themes.
From his Seven Wives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, what was it about Bergman? Like, when did you discover Bergman?
It was in college, my second year. We had like a arts and humanities course that was like a requirement. But I found one that was like the bottom of the class scheduling list. That was talking about like Swedish and Scandinavian film. And I thought that'd be really interesting, and it was probably one of my favorite classes I took there, which is weird given that it was like a required arts and humanities course that everyone hated. But like I lucked out and got an amazing one, and we watched The Seventh Seal, I think, in one of the first couple of weeks, and I was like just blown away by how he did that. And then I went on to just watch a couple more, I think later in that year.
Yeah, man. What's it called? The Seventh Seal was the first one I watched as well from Bergman. It was we did a classic film month, and then Brad chose Seventh Seal, and he's like, yeah, because this, it influenced an episode of Billy and Mandy. It's influenced so many episodes, so many things. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see what's up. We watched that first movie, and I'm like, wow, this is something else. Like, I've never seen anything like this before. And then you come in, and you're like, well, let's go ahead and do a whole month on Bergman. And I'm like, oh, well, that'll be something for sure. I mean, it's not, I've never seen a lot of movies by the man. It's just like Tarkovsky. I've always heard the name, never really watched his movies.
Especially that was a fun month because none of us had seen really anything until we went into that. So going in blind to that was super interesting.
Oh yeah, I love Tarkovsky month. That was probably one of my favorite months on the podcast. We were like, we've never seen any of these. We only know,
and
like,
each one was so different too.
Yeah,
you have like no idea what to expect going into it, and then you're like, what the fuck?
You for sure. But that's how I was with Bergman month. I was like, oh well, you know what? I just really have to research which films I want to see, and it's like, just looking at the synopsis, and we ended up choosing the ones we chose, and there was only one movie I didn't like, even though it's still a great movie. I did not like Winter Light, but like you were saying, he has movies that may not be his best work, but it's still damn good. And Winter Light is amazingly shot. It's amazingly directed. It's just not a movie that I like. It's just, I get tired of that whole trope and whole what's it called, type of story. And but he did it in an incredible way. So we watched this one during that month, and this was like one of my favorites. It was this one, Summer with Monica. Persona just blew me away. I was just like, that, and then I watched I could do without the penis in there, right? But
everything else about it was very interesting,
dude. We watched it for my World Film and Film Theory class, and when we watched the first 5 minutes only. He wanted to show you this that because we were talking about surrealism in filmmaking, right? And the penis comes out, and you just hear like a girl in the background go, "Whoa!" And I was like, "Yep, that's exactly what you saw. That's exactly what you saw, dude." It definitely is what's it called, a penis just flashing on the screen. But Bergman's work really does speak for himself. He was a big influence on Tarkovsky. So was Bresson. You know, when Tarkovsky, was asked why he makes his films really, slow and very, he gave two reasons. He goes, well, the first hour is meant to be slow so that way people can get out of the movie if they went to the wrong one. And then he said, but he doesn't make his movies for the people. He only makes them for two different people. One of them is named Robert Bresson, and the other one is named Ingmar Bergman. Yep. And I was like, when I read that quote, I was like, wow, that's gangster, bro. Like, damn. And he was like, I don't care about what you guys come and buy my movies, pay your tickets. I only care about what Ingmar and Robert tell me about my movies. But he's influenced so many people, and he's, not a lot of people have the title of a multiple international feature film winner. Only so many, like, Kurosawa have gone there. Fellini, has definitely gotten there before. But, what's it called? Bergman's a multiple winner as well. And this movie is, this movie is incredible. This movie definitely, I understand why this movie won him won him the award. And he's also one of the very few foreign filmmakers who were nominated for Best Picture, along with being a foreign film that they submitted. So, Cries and Whispers was nominated for Best Picture. And, you really can't talk about Ingmar Bergman without bringing up Nyqvist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ingmar really did surround himself with different people, but he always kept the same people around that he knew he wanted to work with. So Nyqvist was one of them. His cinematographer, you constantly saw him being his cinematographer, and you also saw him constantly work with actresses like Liv Ullmann, the legendary Max von Sydow, who has rest in peace, recently passed away. You didn't post anything about him passing, and I wanted to ask, how did you take that? And you're a really big fan of Bergman, and you can't not be a fan of Bergman without being a fan of Sydow.
Yeah. I think it's Sydow. I think just because it's like a W is like two V's. I think it might be different, but he's definitely, I think, my favorite actor from Bergman's work. So that was really surprising to me. I just saw that on Twitter. I think I saw your tweet, and I didn't see many others. But I was like, wait, what the fuck is this real? I looked it up, and I was like, oh my god, like that dude had an incredible career, though. It's so sad, dude.
Yeah, he had quite the career, and people. I'm glad that I was listening to a lot of podcasts about when that happened, and everybody was bringing up Sydow, and people were like, now this is kind of reminding me, like, I should probably go watch a bunch of more movies from Bergman, because he's not a filmmaker I know about. And I was like, oh God, that's just one of the things that I love to hear, because everybody's always like, oh, you jump on the train right after they die. It's like, nah, man, like, go and check out those movies that Sydow was on, because he's incredible in those movies for Bergman. But if you're gonna open up and start checking out more movies from Bergman, like, that's amazing. Like, you're about to get your head blown off, because Bergman is really special, especially with those movies with Sydow.
Yeah, and even he had an incredible career even after Bergman, and went on to work in like normal like Hollywood stuff too. Mm-hmm. So he started and then just kept going. Like, he has credits all the way to like 2018, even, which is insane.
He's great, man. He's rest in peace, Max Sydow. He left way before this Corona outbreak happened. So he dipped right at a good time. He dipped right at a good time.
Yeah. It was March 9th.
Yep. Yeah. The day after my birthday.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Dude, all of this like went down pretty much on my birthday.
Yeah.
On the 12th, just like the whole world to know. I was like, okay, cool.
It's cool. Yeah.
Great start to 24.
he what's it called? He also died the day that Stanley Kubrick died, man. The same date that Stanley Kubrick dies. March 9th. That's crazy, dude. But
I think Bergman died March 7th, right?
What is it with the legends dying in March, man?
I don't know. I'm gonna check. I don't know if that was real or not. Oh no, it was July, but
no, come on,
it was
man.
2007. So I got a 7 in there somewhere.
Well, look, dude. What's it called? We got to get into this one, because we're gonna go ahead and open it up here. Finally, we're gonna go ahead and talk about Through a Glass Darkly. Ayden, you know how to say that title in Swedish?
I can give a good guess, but I never really know for sure. To me, I think it's Sesam Ian Spiegel.
Sadami and Spiegel. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Through a Glass Darkly is a family drama directed by Ingmar Bergman. You'll really look at this daughter of him, who this daughter of this man, of this writer, who has just come back after being in a mental hospital. Apparently, she's schizophrenic, and her little brother is growing up, and he seems to have some very strong sexual frustration. And he seems, well, he's like, it's a grown boy, you're getting to that point where, you're starting to figure out your desires, and you're starting to, start playing around with the rug down there, you're getting to that age, along with,
he's got like those porn mags and everything.
yeah, he's got them horns going on. Yeah. What's it called? And along with them lives, Karin's, husband, who is also another man who's facing a lot of sexual frustration because he just cannot get laid at all.
Yeah.
Even throughout he keeps trying all the time, and he's like cannot absolutely get laid. And the father, what's up?
Like surprisingly keep a level head though in a couple of those scenes where he's like shit, but also he's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
so,
well,
like,
sorry,
he's a respectable man here.
He's a respectable man. Yeah,
definitely. Like you can tell he's like, fuck.
Yeah, he's obviously.
What am I gonna do?
He feels like he can't get laid, but he's like, I mean, what am I gonna do? Force her? That's not cool, man. Can't do that, and especially when the father lives here. Like,
yeah.
Excuse me, but yeah, the father very absent, emotionally absent as well, but he's constantly writing. He really wants to find something to to finish his book. And it just doesn't come to him, and he tries to use Karin's illness to spark that that whole inspiration for the book, and he just can't, and he's just like he's very curious, and he's very very what's it called he wants to find something to just finish that damn book. And
yeah, he's like always searching for something, but there's never anything there.
Yeah, which it rubs off on the way that he treats his kids. Like he understands that he's not there, and he wants to change, but like deep down inside, like there's this grand passion for his art that just won't leave, and it's like he has to choose between the art and the kids, and sadly, until the very end, he always chooses the art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all generally not worth it seems.
Yeah, it just seems that even when it seems like he understands that very, very well. Like he that's why he beats himself up so much, and that's why he cries in the room in the kitchen alone when they're eating. It's like he understands that he's doing something wrong, and it doesn't seem that it's until the end, until he sees what happens when he doesn't pay too much attention to his kids. He finally understands that well, I gotta actually be a father now. I can't just keep sacrificing for art. But this movie does have a lot of themes that we're gonna go ahead and get into this conversation later on when I bring up about Karin. But there's so many themes about sexual desire, about about family, about growing up, and also being an artist and really sacrificing for your art. What's it called? I believe Tarkovsky only had one kid, and you think about like how much time was spent with the kid, and how much time was spent making his movies, and you can ask that about Bergman too, because Bergman had a crap ton of kids with a crap ton of women, but
he even dedicated this film to his wife, because this was kind of in his book he says it's like sort of about her, his relationship with her. So like he is kind of like the father figure in this, and she's kind of like Karin. I don't think she had like the same kind of mental illness or whatever, but he just using his kind of draining relationship with his wife at the time sort of tell this. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's I always have felt like there's those movies of Bergman where there's like just bits and pieces of what Bergman is feeling at the time. That's why I think that Scenes from a Marriage is such a very personal movie to him, and that's why I can't really revisit that one, because it just feels like it's Bergman just kind of giving his thoughts on how he messed up a lot of his marriages, and how he was not being the very prominent person in the marriage, and he wasn't being there for his partner. And in here, you definitely feel like it's very much spoken to you. You know, you have his films like Summer with Monica, where Bergman is really talking about that beautiful young erotic love, right? You know, the one the
Yeah.
young love that you just can't get enough when you're a kid. And then you reach movies like this where it's really much him just venting about, you know, how crap of a partner he is and how crap of a father he feels like. But there's just something deep inside Bergman where he just doesn't want to sacrifice his art at all for his family or his kids. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's certainly a lot.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I heard the car in the background a
The
while ago.
ambulance go by. Yeah, I was trying to mute that, but it was going right by. I was like, shit.
Yeah.
Of course, I said that right before it started, but I was
Yeah.
quiet.
So you know what's it called? Minus is the younger brother, and he's always one of the characters I'm really interested in. You know, Karen is the one character I'm interested the most, but uh, after Karen, it's what's it called? Minus is very interesting. You know,
Yeah.
So Minus is a 17-year-old sexually frustrated boy who, you know, when they're coming back from getting the milk, he's like, you need to stop, you know, basically teasing me. You know, you
Yeah.
gotta stop doing that. Like, you know, you're only being here as temptation, and he doesn't know what he doesn't know what to do with it, and Minus is very very interesting in that sense that, you know, I wouldn't recommend you all to perform incest, but you know he's like very much has like some, you know, his urges are being, you know, teased by his sister, and you know it's you know what's it called, the sister seems to be pretty cognizant about that, and she still goes ahead and does it, you know, but that's because of the, you know, the voices telling her to go do that. And you know, what did you think about Minus's character in this film, bro?
I just read right before this, in Bergman's workbook, he was saying that kind of early on in the process, he was really thinking about Minus as like kind of an embodiment of like those voices that she's hearing like as God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting that that's taking place like in her brother, and then she's also like being sexual with God. But
Yeah. Well, because that first time she goes into that room, she's obviously fucking orgasming like
yeah,
100%. I think every time she visits that room, she visits a certain type of personality of each of the people, of the two people who are most important. Because yes, her husband's really important to her, but you never get the sense that she cares about him the way that she cares about Minus and her father.
Yeah, it seems like she like likes him, but she's not overly drawn to him. So she always feels like she needs something more,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be like sexually or just emotionally or whatever.
Yeah. Because so the first time when she visits that room, she has those sexual feelings, right? I think that she's kind of feeling what Minus is feeling, and then when she comes back for that last time, that whole curiosity, that wanting to see God, even not knowing what it's gonna bring, I think that's 100% the dad. I think that's the dad's curiosity, and you know him wanting to, you know, wanting to see this thing that she says that she's seen, and obviously it comes to bite her in the ass after it comes out, but I think every time she's in that room, she's seeing bits and pieces of the personalities of the family. She doesn't really get much of Max. I mean, not Max. I'm sorry. What's it called? What's his name? Martin.
Martin. Yeah.
Doesn't get much from Martin because, you know, she doesn't really feel that strong of a connection to him. You know, it's her husband, but throughout this film, and this is after coming from somebody who watched this film for the second time today, I never feel that there's a strong connection between Martin and Karen.
Yeah, she even like tells him at some point, like, wouldn't it be nice if you had like a good wife and kids or whatever? She's like,
yeah,
kind of just like, fuck off, dude. Go
yeah, it's like, dude, go find somebody else. Like, and poor Martin, because Martin loves her. Martin really, you know, to an extent loves her, and he wants the best for her. And but Karen just doesn't seem to have that connection that Martin has with her. And whereas, you know, Minus loves his sister, but you know, there's those other feelings coming in the way where it's him growing up and feeling those sexual urges. And it's interesting that they reflect off in the room with basically God.
Yeah. Also, like, interesting, just like the setting, kind of influencing that with Minus, because obviously they're like incredibly isolated on this island.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how much that has to do with it, because he's obviously like frustrated, so like he literally has nobody else to get those feelings out with.
Yeah,
But
you really can't get it on with anybody else, but you're either
I
your
wonder like
hand.
if that's why Alabama is like so.
Yeah, somebody in Alabama was like, finally somebody understands me. Who the hell am I gonna fuck? But yeah, you bring up an interesting point. You're isolated from the rest of the world, and your father isn't around to really talk to you about what these feelings mean. So you're basically left to play upon your own urges, and she brings it up when he's talking to her, like like I wish I knew how to control them, and I want to know what to do with them. But when your daughter, when your own sister is being told by the voices to tease those feelings, and to play into those feelings, I think Bergman's saying a lot about this movie. Also, to me, it's a really big talking about the id, the ego, and the superego. Those things that we should obviously do, and those things that we shouldn't be doing, and they're rooted deep down in us. Like we know damn well we shouldn't be performing incest. But what if there's that part which is obviously manifested into the voice? It's like, what if we actually played into those urges? What if we actually played into them, and what could they do to our family? So yeah, I told you guys, this is really a film that's packed with a lot of stuff that we're going to talk
There's
about.
so much happening. Yeah, it's so much in only like 90 minutes, dude.
Yeah, but I was looking at that, like, a lot of his films from this era, going on to even the 70s, he seems to be making films that are like under 2 hours. And I don't know what happens in the 80s that he decides, you know what, I'm going to start making 2 hour and like 40-minute films. And then even Fanny and Alexander's like 3 hours long. It's like, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I've kind of always stuck to more of his shorter ones, I guess. I guess I just really like the way that he does his black and white films, so I just kind of stick on those ones a little bit more. But I kind of need to try a couple of the more later ones in his career.
Yeah, and this is the first one he films in Faro, and it's amazingly shot, and you could tell that he just barely got there. He doesn't really know how to play with this island yet, knowing where to be shooting from. And I think that once you get to like his later ones, like hell, even Persona, he seems to really like get it down now. But this being the first one he shoots in Faro, like it's amazingly shot.
Yeah. Originally he was looking for, I think, a different island in the United Kingdom, but like the production company was like, "Hey, that's really far. Find something closer," and they like recommended Faro. But then when he got there, he said like he wasn't even like disappointed that they couldn't get to the other islands. He said that this was better, and then he ended up like moving there later. So it's like really the perfect location for this, like very isolated in like the middle of the Baltic Sea. I think that really plays onto this plot better. Like if this was like in a city or whatever, this wouldn't have worked nearly as well as just being so isolated in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and it plays a lot really well for the settings of these movies. It's really interesting how he uses it for like Seven Seal, and then, I have not seen Virgin Spring yet, but I'm pretty sure you can vouch for that one.
I haven't seen that either, I don't think.
You never seen Virgin Spring? Yeah, I've never seen Virgin Spring. Those are I really do need to get to watching all of his black and white films, but
yeah, like I literally have his like
his collection.
Like pack. Yeah, I kind of. I guess now I have a lot more time to do that with this whole quarantine thing.
Well, yeah, you can finally get to finish it because you paid a lot of money for that Criterion collection thing.
Yeah, it was half off, I guess, but it was still like a good amount of change for that many films.
Yeah, dude. But what's it called? We're gonna go ahead and get into a commercial break in a bit. But when we come back, we're gonna go ahead and finish talking about. We're gonna go ahead and keep talking about Through Glass Darkly. But you guys need to go ahead and listen to these wonderful commercials. But we'll see you guys when we come back. As always, here at the Cinema Condition, we'll see you guys. Hey, I'm Raul Mendoza, and this is
Jabril Newton.
And we are the hosts of High Flyer Radio. And finally, pro wrestling has come back to the Nerdcore podcast feed in the form of a show hosted by Jabril and I. And we talk about everything and anything in the pro wrestling world on Mondays at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Nothing's off limits. Whatever you guys want to talk about, if it's from AEW to SmackDown to Raw to NXT, nothing's off the table. We can talk about it.
We're going to talk all about it. And if you can get it a day early, you should go to the www.patreon.com/thenerdcore and pledge to the tiers on there so you can get this show and a lot of shows days early before anybody else gets to hear it. But enough talking about it. We'll go ahead and see you there at the Squared Circle. Oh, yeah. Don't tap out. Tune in.
Hey, it's Ashley from the Gamer Corps. You may remember me from such episodes as Big Screen Mess, Mo Money Mo Platforms, and Brad Can Read. Tune in weekly as I blab with my co-hosts Raul the Nerdy Chicano and Brad the Random Germ about the latest news in gaming and gush over what we're playing at the moment. Oh yeah, and we got the deals too. Keep up with the latest deals in gaming and what's happening as I mediate Brad and Raul fighting like a married couple. Will Death Stranding ever come out? Will Cyberpunk 2077 live up to the hype? Is a next-gen worth a $500 console price tag? And has there ever been a movie adaptation of a video game that's been done right? It's all on the Gamer Corps podcast, everywhere where podcasts are.
Hey everyone, my name is Raul, the Nerdy Chicano, and I am the host of The Impaired Files. The Impaired Files is an interview show brought to you every Thursday on the Nerdcore podcast feed. And I interview people such as filmmakers, content creators on YouTube, and podcasters like Colton Geschwander. And if you want to listen to that early, a whole week early, all you got to do is go to the Patreon and pledge to the $1 tier. And if you want to listen to it with the general public, then go to the Nerdcore podcast feed on anchor.fm/the Nerdcore. And the case is closed, but it's not classified. See you guys there.
Hey guys, this is Brad, aka Young Yoda. Raul said I had to make an ad, so that's what I'm doing. It's supposed to be for Unstructured, but as you guys know, you can freaking catch me everywhere when it comes to this podcast feed. You can find me on the Nerd Cores, on Gamer Cores, on Nerdy Chicanos sometimes when I get lost. But for this particular one, I want you guys to go check out Unstructured. The Raul gave me free reign to do whatever I want to do. I don't know what he was thinking. So go hear me talk about LeBron James and Taco Tuesday, vaping, so many other freaking weird topics that chimichangas, that's a good one. Shout out to Deadpool. And yeah, I guess this is the end of the ad. So if you guys want to find me, you can find me all over the place on this podcast feed. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. I love you all. And nerd up.
Hello, 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 guys and gals, and you're listening to The Ladies of Nerdcore. I am your host, Daniela Nunez, and along with my amazing co-host, Ashley Garcia, we discuss many things like social impact, pop culture, political realms, and any controversy surrounding the Nerdverse. Tune in and listen to us bi-weekly on the Nerdcore podcast feed, and we would love to chat and hear your thoughts on our wonderful show. And thank you again for listening to The Ladies of Nerdcore.
What's up, everybody? It is me, Raul, and I'm one of the hosts of the Nerdy Chicano Show. The Nerdy Chicano Show is a comedic show brought to you by Luis and myself, and it comes to you all every Sunday on the Nerdcore podcast feed. You can catch it a day early by becoming a Patreon and supporting us at the $1 tier. And I don't really know how to explain this show other than it's fun. We get to talk about whatever we want, and it helps you move on in the week. So if you want to catch the Nerdy Chicano Show every Sunday at 8 a.m. All you got to do is go to anchor.fm/thenerdcore, and we'll see you there, baby. Hey, everyone, I'm Raul.
And I'm Brad.
And we're the hosts of the Nerdcore podcast, the podcast that talks that nerd. Not on this ad, right?
Not
and
on this one.
We come to you every Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday. On the Mondays, we talk the news. That's the box office, the news of the week, and your trailer talk if there is any. And on Tuesday, we have our theme review. And on Saturday, you have a Saturday morning review, usually movies that have come out in the week or anything we want to talk about. Right, Brett?
Exactly. Whatever we want to talk about, this is our show. If you don't like it, then you don't have to listen.
We're the flagship show of the Nerdcore podcast feed, and we can be found everywhere you can listen to podcasts like Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. So if you want to talk that nerd stuff with us every Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday, make sure you tune in. And Brad?
Young Yoda out.
All right, you're back listening to the Cinema Condition with Raul Alejandro Mendoza and my wonderful guest, Ayden Byrnes. We're still talking about Through a Glass Darkly from Ingmar Bergman. We're going to go ahead and keep continuing our conversation, but we hope you enjoyed that commercial break. As always, you can check out all those other shows on the Nerdcore Podcast Network at anchor.fm/nerdcore. I've been doing something recently with the show where, you guys are... It's taking a lot more time for people to find this show, and that's fine because it's a new feed. I didn't know. I knew that this was gonna happen. That people weren't gonna be able to find the show. That's why I would really appreciate you guys going to the Apple Podcasts and dropping a review, so that way people can actually find the show for us. But now every Sunday you get a throwback episode from the Cinema Condition on the regular Nerdcore podcast feed. But if you want to listen to those new episodes, you're gonna have to listen to them on here on this feed. So I've been doing that as of late on the other feed. But the best way to get this feed to other people is by sharing it with them, but also leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, so that way the feed can be found by other people when they're searching up on Apple Podcasts. Yeah. So, Ayden, we're coming back to talk about this. I want to talk about a couple of other things, and I think our big thing I want to talk about is just the whole what Bergman does in this movie. I want to talk about the dad for a minute. One of the strongest things about this movie is the performances. Anderson's performance in this film is amazing. She's amazing in this film, but I love those. I love the dad in this movie. I don't love the way he is. I love the performance by that actor. What he does in this film, it's like those very subtle things that he's doing. He's not really like in hysterics like Karen, but he leaves those little sudden hints where he's like, you're kind of digging into the persona of who this man is and really understanding him a bit. And I really like that he does that through like a very subtle performance.
Yeah, Bergman seems kind of critical of the father figure in this kind of later on. I don't entirely know why, because I think he plays it kind of exactly how he needed to.
Yeah.
That really absent, and he was.
Yeah,
you just kind of this father like beautifully. Like, I don't know what else he could have really done there. I don't know if Bergman was trying to like kind of write more into that character or not, but I think the way it came across was fantastic. I don't know why it was.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted him to slap the kids around or something,
Yeah, he's like, this isn't me. I beat my children.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, what's it called? He's very subtle, very absent. God, one of my favorite moments in the film is when they're performing the play for him. And he's just there like, he wants to look like he's enjoying it, but he's very much taking an offense to that play. He feels like he's being called out. And the whole time, he has this look of like, like, oh, like I'm just kind of analyzing it. But those facial tics of his show, like, I don't like what's going on here. Like my own kids are calling me out right here.
Yeah, he was definitely super uncomfortable during that entire scene. He's just like, but I mean, he kind of covers it a little bit well at the end. He's like, oh yeah, it's not bad or whatever. Yeah, but.
Oh yeah, he goes to his kids. He's like, "Oh, that was wonderful. But Karin and Minus, they know that what's going on. Like they were like, "No, I don't think."
Yeah, they're not stupid. Like they know.
No, they're not stupid at all. And but that's what I'm saying. Like with his performance, like it's just those little things. Or like when they're out they're out in the ocean with when he's out in the ocean with Martin, they're talking about like, oh, that he saw your diary, and he's like, yeah, well, this is what I wrote, and part of him is kind of like, I don't care, but at the same time there's that curiosity coming back. It's like, I wonder what my daughter is doing then, now that she found out about all these things about that I'm writing about her.
Yeah, he like for a second almost seemed like apologetic for it, but not like he really backed off of that, like right when Martin started kind of criticizing him a little bit, but and then really like kind of backed into a corner there. And was like,
yeah, the second time watching this film, I definitely don't like the dad now. The first time, I really didn't get much from the dad. This second time, like, I really don't like this dude at all. Like, I'm glad that he changes at the end, because if he would have been the same way throughout the film, like, yeah, I was not feeling this guy at all. I was like, dude, like, pay attention to your kids.
Yeah, the more I watch it, the more I realize that he's like, there's like nothing redeemable about him. I think this is like my fifth time. I think it's fourth time watching it. But yeah, every time I watch it, I'm just like, this guy sucks ass.
This guy's terrible. Yeah, this guy's just like, he's not deadbeat because he's there, but he explains like he mentally just checked out after his wife died, and you kind of understand that, but like at the same time, like, bro, you got kids to worry about, like, you got a 17-year-old boy who is growing up without a father figure to really talk to about those things that are going on with him, and your daughter just came back from what's it called? Just came back from a psych ward, and all you can think about is how to use her illness to really inspire you to finish this novel. Like, like you're kind of a piece of crap, honestly.
Yeah, and even kind of when his wife was dying, he was like talking about using that kind of her illness also for like inspiration for one of his books. It's like, dude,
it's like you're kind of a piece of crap.
Emotionally available for anymore.
Yeah, like you're emotionally checked out, bro. Like you really got to think about these things, and things really change when when Karin talks with him right there in the boat. I think it was a boat, right?
Where he's talking to her.
Yeah, before they get ready to go to the what's it called, to the psych to take her back to the hospital.
When he's like in that like abandoned ship with her.
Yeah, it's an abandoned boat. Like they're really talking about, and I think that she is. He seems to start changing there. He's like, okay, now I see what the hell's going on here. But yeah, like the dad throughout this film is one that it's not I gravitate. It's interesting to what's it called, to analyze this guy because he's just a piece of crap. But once again, I think it's Bergman talking about those subconscious thoughts of ours, like especially us as artists. And I think you and I can really to talk about. I think you and I can relate to it here. It's like we're constantly being asked, like at least with me, they're like like, oh, how many kids are you gonna want and stuff like that. And my mind thinks like, oh well, you know what, I kind of want to make movies until the day I'm dead. So if by 50 I'm not 50 or 60, I really don't have a kid yet. I really don't want one anymore. Like, I kind of just want to keep working. And then like, I'm so, I love the art that we work in. And, I think that Bergman personifies those thoughts that of course he's having on him.
There is that scene on the boat again, I think, where he's asking, or he's kind of pointing out simple things to Martin. Like, like you haven't thought about her dying like at all. Like, wouldn't that be practical? So he's kind of, that personification of like all those things that like we're probably thinking, but like don't want to say.
Yeah. It's those things, those layers of the subconscious where, we're thinking about, like
he's just an honest subconscious guy.
Yeah. I think he's just his honesty. He's just, like, and by the way, and like, it doesn't make him a good person, but I think that just Bergman is pointing out, like, we don't think about these things. We don't think about, how would we actually feel if they die? Like, like, especially because you see Martin as only the guy, like until that part where he's in the room with her, like Martin really just wants to get laid. And, you don't see much about Martin. It's like, like inside right now, you're just thinking like, I want to get laid. And I want to, for my wife to pleasure me, but once you get to that boat with him, and he's like, "Are you thinking about like what would happen if she dies?" Like, and you really start breaking into the the subconscious of your brain. And you're like, oh, fuck, like it's those things I don't want to think about. Those things that are like deeply hidden in there that we don't want to think about. Like, and Martin doesn't even know that she basically slept with her brother. Like he doesn't know how to, I wonder what would happen if they were to tell him and how he would react to that,
Yeah, I think he would definitely kind of live in like a denial from that for a long time, or just wouldn't know how to process it.
Yeah.
He just seems to not feel comfortable with his like inner emotions enough to kind of deal with stuff like that.
God, all this stuff we're talking about, it's kind of reminding me of the work of Slavoj Žižek, his work and just all those what's it called, basically just analyzing the whole mother and father, the mother and son whole thing. And it reminds you of Murmur of the Heart for some reason. But yeah, it's just he's a very interesting character, the father. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about the father before we go ahead and head into like the big thing that I want to talk about?
No, I think kind of going back to like what Bergman said, like with the father not really being his favorite character. He was also, I just want to mention the other things he said about the other characters. So we have like that reference point. He was saying that like he didn't like how the father played. He said like if they were like a string quartet, like the father was kind of playing all the wrong notes. And Martin was playing beautifully but didn't have enough elbow room, which I think is like, I guess, fair because he was a great character but he didn't really have a lot of moments to fully shine, I guess. to really understand who he was.
Mm-hmm.
He necessarily like Lars Pasgard, who's Minus. He just didn't think he was the right fit, but that wasn't really like his fault as an actor. It was just like he didn't give him like the proper
direction.
Yeah, or he just didn't really wasn't necessarily like the perfect fit of an actor, even though he was like, still a good actor.
Yeah, he was still pretty good. I really bought that whole innocent look on him. But yeah,
yeah, I think like he was pretty much solid in mostly everything. I think like the ending line he delivered maybe a little cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Dad, I think that's probably like
Papa
one
spoke to me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it was like
that's a little bit cheesy. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who thinks that. I'm glad that you think that too. I think that was really kind of cheesy, really cheesy to end on that too. But I think it would have been interesting to not have it read so cheesy.
Yeah, or just kind of have some different way of ending that, I think.
But I also think
even the kid.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But I also think that takes us back to the whole innocence of that kid. And, you know, he's really like the center of at least who we are as people. Like, we go back to our innocence as children. I think that line reads perfectly in the sense that it's taking us back to the main thing, is that this whole movie is just about basically what happens when a father is so absent. So when that kid finally gets that chance to speak to his father, it kind of takes him back to being a kid and being like, oh, man, I just spoke to my father for the first time. Like, so, but yeah,
I do think that is a good way to kind of end it in a way that that things are maybe going to get better, but like
it is kind of cheesy.
Something changed, I guess. So yeah, I guess it kind of gives you some satisfaction in that regard. But I think just the way it was delivered, or that particular way of like ending the scene that way, was, I think, just a little bit off. But otherwise, I think that's a good way to end it. It just needs a little bit of work there.
By the way, I just God, I always have to bring this up when we talk about Bergman. The Bergman close up, bro. I love that Bergman close up when Karine is just kind of backed away, and then she walks in closer, and in the foreground gets blurrier, and it's just that face of her just there in disarray. You're like, whoa, like, God, Bergman's on something else.
Yeah, some of the ones with her especially were fucking amazing.
Yeah. Like, you definitely you put up there those close-ups from a Persona, hell, even some from there's that one where the Ingrid's face is half of it, and then it comes in, it's Liv Ullmann's face in Autumn Sonata.
Yeah.
Like, you have all those legendary close-ups from Bergman that he's made famous, but this one in Through a Glass Darkly, there's just something about that part when she just comes into the foreground and then gets blurrier, and you're just like, wow, like, God, Bergman, you know what the hell you're doing.
And even like the wides and pretty much every shot in this is incredible. Like, there's no frames that I was like, oh, that's rough, or that could have been framed better. Like, they're all phenomenal. I think one of my favorite ones is when Minus is running to the boat.
Mm-hmm.
You can find Scare there. That super wide shot with the boat, and he just runs and they just hold it.
Oh, my favorite is and you can tell that what's his name, Eggers, took inspiration from this with the lighthouse when Minus and Karin are walking back from getting the milk, and the lighthouse is the light is in the back, and it's just shining, and you have the water. Like, it's one of my favorite wide shots from Bergman.
That is one of the best as well. I do also really love the shot with Martin and the father going out to cast the nets, like that wide shot of them in the boat. I think that I used that. I think when Max von Sydow passed away, I tweeted like that GIF of him in the boat.
I'm telling you, man, this movie is just so beautifully shot, and it's showing you, like, once again, like, this is a film. It's Bergman who put so much care into his movies, and he really does think about them a lot. Like, there's never a movie that you don't see that it doesn't have that tender, loving care from Bergman. He's not really someone that crafts without reason.
Yeah, I think, he crafts everything perfectly. This was, while I was watching this, I was like really thinking like, damn, I really need to shoot some black and white film for that new like movie camera that I got.
Oh yeah,
I just bought like a roll of like 60mm color film, but like after watching this, I'm like, fuck, I need to buy some black and white film and really play around with that.
Yeah. And I guess off topic before we get into the what's it called, the actual, talk about the one of the big things I want to talk about this movie. Recently, the film company that Fellini shot his black and white films on, they recently came back into the market, and they started selling that film now. And I was like,
oh really?
Yeah.
I did get some film from like Italy, like Ferrania.
Yeah.
P90. I got like a couple rolls of that, but I'm kind of, one of them is just like half in my camera because I'm not really shooting anything right now.
Yeah, well, none of us are shooting anything.
While, but yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to see how that looks.
Yep. Yeah, and I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, it takes me back, like, because those scenes in Dolce Vita are just amazingly shot in black and white. And I was like, here it is, the damn what's it called, film that they would use back then. And I believe also De Sica used a lot of it, and Rossellini used a bunch of it too. But this is mostly the one that Fellini shot his black and white films on. And it also, I had to bring that up because I'm also working on the film essay for my class on 8.5, and yeah. But yeah, dude, let's go ahead and get into this big thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about why would Bergman choose? So for the people who you're listening to this, you don't know, like, is it actually God that's coming out? Like, no, it's not a guy with a white beard coming out. It's in the form of a spider, of a spider, and a spider that wants that moment when Martin's in the room with her, and what's it called? And then Karian's in there, and her father's there. The spider tries to penetrate her, forcefully penetrate her. So I ask why would Bergman choose to personify God with a spider, a creature that a lot of us find to be scary, very what's it called? We have phobias around spiders. We tend if we see a spider, we tend to kill it, which is really interesting. And I wanted to ask, like, why would Bergman choose to do that here?
I think he's just really struggling to kind of figure out what God is around this time. So to put it into such a strange creature that none of us would really expect, I think is really kind of tells a lot about his like mental state at the time with that decision, I guess, as to what God is.
Yeah.
You could also kind of think about it like in terms of like God has all these different like 8 legs, I guess, that can show up in all these different forms. So maybe that might have been some reason for it, but kind of what Karen says at the end, or I don't remember who said that at the end, but like God is kind of appearing as like just as love. I think the father was talking about that.
Yeah, the father is like, God is love.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's kind of talking about that, but I guess it went through so many iterations that somehow that manifested as like a creature.
Yeah.
For all the different kind of possibilities of it.
Yeah, I mean, he tells him, like, your daughter, I mean, your sister's gonna be fine, but what's it called? The brother asks, like, if God is love, then it's because I love my sister, and it's like in this way, and it's like, no, you have it all wrong. God is love in the sense that it's the love that we feel, that unconditional love we feel for each other. It's not God in the lusting way or the way that we that we lust for each other. It's a different kind of love that we feel, and it's really interesting that that what's it called, that Bergman does that with the spider. Like, he's kind of, I get what you're saying, because Tarkovsky does the same thing in his films, but I think he does it more on a philosophical level about his struggles with faith, and Bergman has struggled a lot with his faith, and you can see it in this film. So I was just like, the whole time when he's bringing up, like, God's about to appear in this room, and it's a spider that's trying to penetrate her. It's like, wow, like God, Bergman, what are you thinking at this moment when you're writing this film? And I think you bring up a really interesting point when you're talking about, like, being an 8-legged creature. Really, he's had so many iterations that you're like, wow, like, maybe he puts him in the version of a spider that we find so disgusting, so he can find the beauty in something that's so scary to us and so ugly to us.
Yeah, I think also just looking through like kind of his notes around this time, he says like in his workbook that God is both dark and light.
Mm-hmm.
So because has all these like kind of pulling Karen into some of these situations with Minus that are obviously like bad, but then kind of bringing her into other like more like positive moments also,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of inspired the title Through Glass Darkly, in reference to like the old mirrors that were made out of like metal. So you'd look into them and everything would be like darker, like the background and everything would be darker, and you can just barely see yourself. So it's kind of this way of seeing yourself through this darker entity, like kind of like rose-colored glasses, but the opposite, where you just like you see everything as like negative or darker.
Yeah. And it's interesting where he takes, the conversation, because so these three films, Through Glass Darkly, Winter Light, The Silence, are apparently a trilogy, but it's not a really narrative trilogy. I've never seen The Silence. Have you seen The Silence?
I have not.
You've never seen? Yeah.
No.
I've never seen The Silence before, but I did see Winter Light, and you can tell like the Winter Light is really where he's having his conversations on faith. But yeah, man, what's it called? And it's interesting where he brings it up in that film. I gotta sit down and watch the Silence one of these days.
Yeah, I think he says that that's kind of an extension of this one, kind of questioning what God is a little bit more than in The Silence is like a pure, just like God's like not saying shit. Like this is like what happens when you're asking him and he just doesn't say anything back.
Yeah, kind of like what happens when now the Father isn't absent, but God is absent now.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, God, I've been loving our conversation here, man, and we're gonna finish it up here, and we're gonna go ahead and do the hot seat on with you. But yeah, I just love when Bergman does these very introspective works, and you see more of it in his later work. But this is 100% one of my favorite movies of all time. This is one of my favorite of his work. It's one of my favorite international films of all time. It's you can tell that he, from this point forward, like he really starts understanding his craft, and he starts building upon that more and more and more.
Yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier, talking about the sound a little bit. I think this is kind of one that he really kind of explored that a little bit more, just to kind of fine tune that aspect of his filmmaking, and nails it here with just keeping some moments silent. The moment where Karin's in the room, just like with those like subtle little whispers. And then throughout the whole thing, you hear like those distant like boat horns or like fog horns.
Yeah.
Which are so eerie and kind of help get you into like almost Karin's mental state.
Yeah.
And really draws on the isolation more.
Yeah. Well, because one of the main things it teaches in film school is about introducing your setting and really introducing the atmosphere of your film. And he does that. He just does that so perfectly with those subtle horns and just those moments when you're in the ocean and you have the water kind of slapping together across, or just those droplets of rain dropping when they're in the boat together by themselves. You get a sense of what Karin is kind of feeling at the time.
Yeah, it's just also a really interesting movie to watch during this time of kind of self-isolation during this virus.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's why I won't watch the Lighthouse right now, because that's a whole film about self-isolation.
Yeah, that's but also I don't know if it would be like nice to be going through that experience on an island like this, or like worse, like it'd be kind of cool to be like isolated in an environment like this, but also like you could drive yourself so mad just hearing that like boat horn all day in the distance and nothing else.
Yep. Well, let's go ahead and get you into the hot seat, bro. I really liked our conversation, but it's time to get you into the hot seat. So before you leave here, Ayden, you have to recommend a film to the public, and then you have to call dibs on a film for season 2 that nobody else can grab. And I'm really interested to see if anybody else has caught your film yet, but we'll see what's up. But first,
I really doubt it. Yeah,
you really doubt. First, what will be the film that you're gonna be recommending to the people?
My film recommendation is Mr. Nobody from director Jaco van Dormiel. I don't know how to say that, but it's like a I don't know if this was like a partially from Belgium, Germany, Canada, kind of a combination there. It's a really interesting film about kind of like decision making, and how that affects your life, whether like positively or negatively, or like the absence of decision, is that the same things like making one. So that's a really interesting film A really interesting performance from Jared Leto also, which is not kind of what you would experience usually from him, I feel like, but I think this is a really interesting film. Also, not one I watch often. I love this movie, but I can't watch it very often because it really fucks you up and you're like, wow, did I make horrible decisions in my life?
Yeah, kind of how I feel with Requiem for a Dream, bro.
I have not seen that, but this movie definitely fucked me up for a while. I was like, damn, I made every decision so poorly when I first watched this in like college. But it's definitely one I'd recommend watching if you haven't seen it.
All right. Well, what's it called? What's it called? So what's the name of the movie again for the people who can, so they can.
Mr. Nobody.
Mr. Nobody.
It's on Netflix, I think. But also don't watch the director's cut if you happen to have a choice. The director's cut's weird. It's the same thing, but includes a lot of like random pissing scenes. So like, just watch the normal cut on Netflix.
All right, man. Yeah, a bunch of pissing. Thanks for that recommendation. I've never seen the Mr. Nobody. There was I always wanted to talk to you. Like, because I have a friend of mine who has this movie on Blu-ray. We just never got a chance to watch it yet. Have you watched Leviathan?
No.
Yeah, it's a Swedish film as well.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to ask you because I mean you watch pretty much every Swedish movie and anything Swedish, but yeah, I was like, God, Leviathan looks pretty good, and I don't know if Ayden's ever seen this before.
That sounds sick. Yeah, I might check that out. I've never even heard of that. But it looks like it'd be really interesting. Yeah, I've seen a lot of like random shit from like Swedish like crime movies, which are another one I'd recommend, just like not the official recommendation, is the original Swedish Insomnia. Not like the American remake, but the one that they initially made.
Insomnia, Sweden, I believe that one's was it the Nolan one?
That was the remake one, which is also incredible in its own right. Yeah. But it's very Americanized. So watching kind of the original Swedish one. Also, Robin Williams was phenomenal in that movie. Just as a side note. But the original Swedish one is insane. Yeah. But also kind of a little bit creepier, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the actual hot seat, man. What is the film that you're going to call dibs on for season 2 of the Cinema Condition?
I'm going to go with Comet from Sam Esmail.
Never seen that movie before.
Yeah, it's art.
It's one of your favorite favorite directors too.
Yeah. He pretty much only does TV right now, but this is his only like feature film that he's done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm gonna go with. That'll be really fun to kind of break down all of that.
Yeah. So that's going to be our season 2 lock-in for Ayden, and that's awesome, man. What's it called? Leia, I believe Leia picked Tokyo Godfathers. I can't remember. Cause she was episode 3. It's a while ago already. I got to go listen back because I need to make edits for all those and for the episodes. So that's the only way I can keep these things like actual locked in my brain. It's like, oh, let me go look at the picture I made for it. So I got to go back and get that back into my brain. But yeah, I mean, thanks, bro. Can you tell them where they can find your work? Like, you're an incredible photographer. Where can they find your photography, your film work, and all that wonderful stuff?
You can find my kind of photo, some video stuff on my Instagram. That's Ayden.Byrnes, AYDEN.BYRNES, or my website is rbs.nyc.
or
AydenByrnes.com. Either one of those will get you there. Or Twitter, I occasionally post some stuff like I posted a little bit of stuff that I'm working on recently on there, which is Burns152, the same spelling for Burns on there.
Yeah, you can also find him acting a fool on there. Let's just say that he talks about a lot of hockey on Twitter.
Yeah, not so much recently with the hockey being shut down. So now it's just like lizard pictures.
Yeah, but that damn lizard is amazing.
Like he's a great guy.
Yeah. You can also find Ayden occasionally on the Nerdcore podcast. He's always on to talk about a bunch of stuff. You can also find him in a lot of different Twitch streams where he's just kind of like talking when he's
going around trolling.
Just going around trolling, man. but dude, it was awesome having you, bro. I love you, man. You're one of my favorite people around here. Ayden's somebody that I hope to work with one day, and one day we're gonna share that table at Con. It's gonna be amazing, and you know, absolutely one of the people who I just love talking to, and he's the reason why I'm so into film photography now, even though I can't shoot anything at the moment. But you guys make sure you go.
So sad. Yeah.
I'm so sad.
I really tried to get into the movie film thing with that new roll of like
60 mil.
Vision 3. Yeah, but I'm like, fuck, no, I can't do it. I was like, do I just go up on my rooftop and film going out shooting something out that way?
Yeah, no, I'm starting to think about shooting self portraits now, man. Like, you know, what am I supposed to be doing right now?
I've seen a lot of people kind of doing like self portrait stuff, which is really interesting.
I don't know how I do self portraits with film though, because like, well,
there is like a self timer on some of them. Mine, I think one of mine is broken, and then but you have to really like get your focus right and everything, and then yeah, it's probably a pain in the ass, but
it's a pain in the ass. Well, that's been the episode for you all. Thank you so much for stopping by. You know, Patreon supporters really make this show happen. You can join the Patreon at patreon.com/nerdcore. You can follow the Nerdcore at nerdcore_. Excuse me, on Twitter. Good old burp on the microphone, right? The Nerdcore on Instagram. And you can follow me at the Nerd Chicano on both Instagram and Twitter. And, you know, just go and check out my work. I do, you know, I post occasionally photography. Well, let's not say occasionally. I post it all the time. But I post occasionally about the work, like film work I'm doing. I post a lot of like, whenever I do this thing where whenever I finish a script, I post the title page on there. And then I never tell you guys about what the script is actually about. So...
I do that thing where I like start writing scripts and never finish them. Yeah.
That's where Ayden and I seem to have a lot of similarities. So what's it called? Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Look, I'm not sure who we have next week. I really, really want to bring Nikki for Spirited Away for next week, but I have a feeling we're gonna start re-inviting guests next week. So I'll keep you guys posted on what's the next episode, but I'm glad that we finally were able to do this. This should have been episode 3, but it was not episode 3. And guys, make sure you go, you know, review the podcast and rate it wherever you can find it, you know, do all that one stuff. But most importantly, please go and tweet Ayden to finish The Mirror. Please. We need to do that review soon. We'll see you guys later. I love you guys. Bye.